part ways with that person. So they were looking for somebody else. And what had happened was that ReadPop had actually reached out to some folks at DC, and they said, hey, you know, are you guys interested in working with us to do this? Or do you know somebody that might be able to help us? And my friends over at DC were like, well, we can't do it. You know, it's kind of a conflict of interest, but we have a person. He's the right person for you. He's a super fan. You should talk to him. And they were kind of like, well, what's his experience in the industry? And they're like, oh, no, he's not in the industry. He's in IT. That's where his resume is. And they're like, well, if he has no experience, we're not interested. And to their credit, and I owe them to this day, Matt Keller over at DC, who was the one who pushed for me. He was like, no, this is the guy. He knows everything there is. He has as connected as a fan can be to this industry, and to conventions. You want to talk to him. And it went kind of back and forth for a while. And then finally I got a phone call. It was, by the way, it was a consulting position. It was not a full-time position. They just needed somebody to come in and kind of do the floor plan and, be on site during a convention and kind of make sure that everything ran smoothly. It wasn't a tremendous job description at the time.
So you're still doing the IT stuff, and this is just on the side at this point.
Well, I hadn't gotten the job yet. What had happened was, but eventually that's what it turned into. So just real quick, let me finish that story.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually the ReadPop folks said, okay, we'll listen to this guy, but we really don't have a lot of time. We're interviewing a lot of people. We'll give him 10 minutes on a phone call. And then, Matt was like, okay, that's great. So they set up a time to meet with me. And I thought it was kind of strange. Like, if you're interviewing for your job, don't you think, you'd go in, especially they're in Connecticut. I'm in New York City. Like, it's not that far. But then, no, you don't have to come down. I get on the phone. Sure enough. They're like, listen, Mike, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Just, to set your expectations. We're meeting with a lot of people, and, I don't know, how this is going to work out, but, we were very short. We have very short on time. We can only talk to you for like 10 or 15 minutes. I was like, that's great. Perfect. And they said, give us some ideas about what your ideal convention would be. And I just started to lay out, I had pre-thought about a lot of this, obviously. And I just started to lay out all of my thoughts. And we talked for over 2 hours. Now, at the time, I was like, they only told me they had a 10 or 15 minutes. But we talked for 2 hours. And I felt great about it. And they're like, all right, thanks for your time. Hung up the phone. And shortly after, I got a phone call from Matt. Was like, what did you say? And I'm like, what, was it bad? And they're like, no, they love you. You're going to get the job. He's like, listen, they're going to call you and tell you, don't let them know I told you, but they loved you, and you got the job. And I was like, this is great. Now, it was only a consultant job. It was only, at the time they only needed somebody to basically do like a little bit of the floor plan and just be on site to make sure that everything runs smooth. It was a consulting gig. It wasn't what it is today. But I was overjoyed. I was so excited. And he's like, yeah, they'll get back to you. They'll make all the plans. Now, I had my full-time IT position. But this was such an exciting opportunity. Like, now I've taken that next step. Now I'm going to be an actual professional. And it was a little scary. I'm not going to lie. I just wanted so badly to do this, but at the same time, so badly not to screw it up. Like, I kind of had that self-realization is like, I really don't have any experience in this whatsoever. But, my wife talked me off the ledge, and she's like, this has been your dream to be part of this industry for as long as I can remember. You love it so much. You got to try. And what's the worst that can happen? Like, it doesn't work out, and you tried, and, you've learned something new at least. So I was like, okay, well, we're definitely going to do it. The interesting part of the story comes a year later at C2E2 20. So this was for C2E2 2011, the second year of C2E2. Subsequently, they hired me to do New York Comic Con 2011, gave me a little bit more responsibility. brought me back again for C2E2 2012. But by that time, it was still a consulting position, but it was becoming a little bit more. I was doing all of the communications between all of the creators. Started doing some of the contracts and billing processing. Like, I didn't do it myself, but made sure everybody was paid up. Made sure that everyone had their contract signed. Make sure everyone had their table assignments communicated, et cetera, et cetera. So it was growing in scope. So at C2E2 2020, we're in the bar after a long day at the show. The team is there, the Reed Pop team is there, and one of the guys there, Peter, he's got a couple of drinks in him. He's feeling all happy, and he kind of just looks over at me, and he's like, "You're not even supposed to be here." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" and he's laughing. He's like, "You're not even supposed to be here." And I go, "Can you explain that a little bit?" She's like, remember when you got hired? I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You weren't supposed to get hired." I was like, what? He's like, "We wanted to maintain good relationships with DC. So we just took that interview with you as a courtesy. Even before we got on the phone with you, we were like, oh, we'll say we'll talk to him for a few minutes, say thank you. You had some great ideas. I appreciate your time, but we found somebody else." He goes, "But everything you said was so amazing compared to all of the people that we had spoken to who had worked in the industry for years doing comic events, who ran their own shows, who did their own artist alleys. You had ideas and concepts that nobody else who had worked in this industry for years had. And we loved every second of it. And we loved your knowledge and your enthusiasm and your ideas about breaking the tradition of what a comic book convention should be. And that's how you got the job." And I
All
was
right,
really like, "You effer."
so no, and it's a fantastic story, but it wouldn't be the show if I didn't ask you to just stop. What were some of these ideas that got you the job?
Looking back now, it's hard. It's kind of hard to remember what they were, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I know one specifically because I utilize it to this day,
Mm-hmm.
and interestingly enough, I have found that once we started doing it at Reed Pop shows, a lot of other shows kind of adopted this idea. So traditionally at a comic book show, and this has been since the dawn of time, as long as I can remember, the biggest name comic talent would always be at the front of Artist Alley. And then what would happen is, as you kind of traversed Artist Alley, the further you got into Artist Alley, the more you got towards the back would be the lesser known creators, right? So you'd have A-listers up front, you'd start to get into the B-listers, C-listers, and then you'd get into the up-and-comers, and then you'd get into the people who, haven't broken it at all and, just got a table to sell their wares. And the audience would never go to the back. They just wouldn't. Those people in the back would die there. They wouldn't make any sales. They wouldn't get any visibility. They wouldn't get any opportunity to, create their own audience. And I always hated that. Even as a fan, I would be that guy who would go up and down every aisle, and I would go and talk with those guys in
Of
the
course
back.
you were. Yes.
Because I even to this day, and I still feel this, like everybody is even to me. Like, I love all of my creator friends, but whether you're super A-lister, been working at Marvel or DC for the last 20 years, or you've just broken in the industry, or you're just trying to break into the industry, every single person deserves the same level of attention and the same level of respect. I'm a big fan of that, and that's how, to this day, like, I treat everybody. But at the time, like, again, I just didn't like that concept. So one of the idea I'd come in with was, listen, you want everyone at your show to be successful. You want to have creators return, and you want them to be able to make their money, get a return on their investment, and reach a wider audience. If the more successful they are, the more successful you are, because if you help build these creators, give them their visibility, give them their audience, they're going to not only be appreciative to you, if they become bigger names, like, they're going to remember the opportunities that were given to them. And it's just the right thing to do. Like, you don't want to ghettoize anybody. So I said, in order to give everybody the proper visibility, is you literally take the biggest, best names in the industry that are at the show, and you put them all the way in the back, the absolute furthest from the entrance that you can get. What that will do is it'll allow people to go up and down all the aisles, because they're going to want to get to those people, and they're going to traverse the entire alley, and they're going to get to see creators that they never got a chance to see before. And those
it's why the milk is in the back of the supermarket.
It's why the milk is in the back of the supermarket. Exactly. You get to see all the other cookies and bread along the way. And I gave them that concept, and I said, listen, and there's different levels of it. Like, depending on how your artist alley is laid out, you put all the big names in the front, you put, some of the larger names, but not necessarily the super A-listers, on the sides. So you're getting all the cross traffic. So you get traffic going from front to back, you get traffic going from left to right. Everybody gets more visibility. Everybody gets more love. Everybody starts making more money, starts growing their audience. And, it's just an ecosystem that kind of feeds into itself. And they love that idea. They love the idea of the fairness of it, and the kind of creating a more traditional ebb and flow, a more non-traditional ebb and flow. Because what would happen also was everyone would stand in the front of an artist alley and block. There would be lines for whoever it was. Most of the time, you couldn't even get past those lines to see who was in the second aisle, the third aisle, the last aisle. So now by spreading everybody out and putting these draws in the back, you're changing the whole traffic pattern of Artist Alley.
Right. I mean, something is always done the way it's always been done until somebody goes, well, what if we just do it this way?
Correct. And Gabe, I'll tell you that it made perfect sense to me until that first C2E2. It made until I got there, and people were so angry with me. So angry. How could you put me in the back? How can you do this to me? Do you know who I am? All of this stuff. And I was like, wow, did I mess this up? Did I read this wrong? To this day, listen, anyone who knows me knows how focused I am on the creators. But at the end of the day, for me, the most important component of this whole ecosystem is the fans. It's all about creating the best experience for the fans, to me, which I think is what has made me so successful at this idea. So when I came up with these new ideas, it was all through the lens of being a fan. What would make the fan experience better? And that, to me, felt like a good way to make the fan experience better. You're going to see more creators. You're going to get exposed to more material. You're going to do all these things. And the return to that is that it's going to be better for the creators. Again, it's an ecosystem that fills into each other. So I got there, and people were so mad at me, yelling at me. And who are you? What are you?
So many precious egos to satisfy.
And some of these people were not, legitimately, some of these people, again, were not even like names. And it's just like, it just threw everything off kilter. It was just not what they were used to. And at first I was kind of terrified. And then I just kind of squared my shoulders back, and I'm like, no, I believe it. I didn't say it outright to anybody, but in my mind, I was just kind of like, I believe in this idea. It's going to work. And I have to tell you, probably I wouldn't even say 9 out of 10, like 49 out of 50 people who yelled at me on day one were praising me by Sunday, 5:00. This was great. This was the best of it I ever had. My lines were manageable. Oh, I got more visibility than I ever had. I've had more sales than I ever had. The proof of concept worked. And then I rolled it into New York Comic Con for 2012 and tweaked it a little here and there. And again, New York Comic Con was even worse, with people screaming at me. Because that was a bigger show, especially. It's always been a bigger show, but that's that time. That was the crown jewel of shows, and people were just so mad about it. And again, I proved it out, and it's the way it's been ever since. And I've seen other shows adopt that since, which kind of, it kind of validates me a little bit. It feels good. I'm not going to lie to see that.
Of course.
shows adopted this idea, and they don't know, like they don't, there's no book says that's the